the Italians, it seems, have a special grudge against St. Peter because there's a whole series of very short Italian folk tales, all of which involve St. Peter as the goat. St. Peter doing something foolish or venal or somehow being held up to ridicule by the Lord and the other disciples. I don't know quite why this is. It could be because Peter is a rival of St. Joseph and the Italians are so devoted to St. Joseph. It could be because they've lived with the papacy on their doorstep for so many centuries. They like to, poke fun at the folly and pretension of Peter and his successors. But one of the stories I can relate, one of the less cruel ones, deals with a time when the Lord and the 12 apostles were traveling from village to village preaching. One morning they get up and Jesus says to the 12, he says, we're going to hike to the next town, guys. Everybody pick up a rock to take with you. So the disciples look at each other, don't quite know what this means, but they obey. Each of them picks up a pretty good sized stone, maybe 10, 15 pounds, slightly larger than a football, can carry under one arm with your walking stick in the other hand. Except for Peter. Peter picks up this tiny little pebble and puts it in his pocket. Okay, so they all walk to the next village. It takes half a day. They get there around lunchtime. They're all sweaty. They're all hungry. 11 of them are tired. And the Lord says, all right, guys, let's eat. Changes the stones into bread. Okay, so each of the 11 has got a big, hearty loaf of steaming, fresh bread. And Peter's got this little bitty crumb. And he says, Lord, what am I going to eat? And Jesus says, well, why have you been carrying such a light burden all day? That's what you've got. So they have their lunch. They preach in the town. They stay overnight. Next morning, they're going to hike to the next town. And Jesus says again, we're going to the next town, boys. Everybody get a rock. So each of the guys gets a good 10, 15-pound rock like before, tucked under one arm. Peter gets this enormous boulder that he can scarcely carry. Okay, it's both hands. He's staggering under the weight of it. Okay. And they walk on to the next village, and they get there around midday, and Jesus and the 11 get there before Peter because he's sweating, just panting under the weight of this enormous stone. And Jesus says, all right, guys, we're going to have some fun at Peter's expense. Everybody drop your rocks. I'll drop the rocks. Now, noontime, it's getting ready for the lunch rush, and all the bakers in this town have just pulled all their bread out of the ovens. They take the coin purse, and they go buy up a couple dozen loaves of bread, and they bring them back to where they're going to be having lunch. Just as Peter, sweating and panting and out of breath, comes up with his rock, and Jesus says, put that rock down, Peter, and come have lunch with us. And when Peter sees the trick that they played on him, he refuses to touch any of the bread. He's furious. Okay, so that's actually where the story ends. I suspect that there's some spiritual wisdom in that, maybe both at the end of the first day and at the end of the second day. But like I said, the Italians apparently have it out for St. Peter, so he turns out to be the good. So thank you very much, guys. I'll see you next week. Some of you I'll see you after Easter. Thanks.